hope that was
Thank
15 minutes.
Thank you, Karishma, for the excellent broad overview of the legal and policy framework of the energy industry. And also thank you for almost keeping to time. Now we would start the panel discussion, and for the panel we have about 45 minutes. But I think the organizers may not mind if the discussion are really enjoyable and we exceed a bit. After the panel, we would have, I'm sure we would have an interesting Q&A session for which we would have about 10 to 15 minutes. The 45 minutes panel, I would plan to do first a 10-minute speech by each of the panelists, and then each of the panelists can give another 5 minutes discussion on the issues that have been touched by other panelists. And I would not want to confine the panelists within any specific area within energy law and policy. I mean, you are at liberty to speak as broadly as possible within the general theme of this panel. But as a moderator, I would also give an area which each panelist can focus, but with the caveat that you are not restricted to issues that I invite you to cover. You are at liberty to speak on other broad areas. And with that intro, let me first invite Dr. Kamal Hossain to give a 10-minute speech on the sector. And as I And as I said at the beginning, I mean, he helped the newly independent Bangladesh to establish not only its energy industry, but also the regulatory framework of the energy industry. So this has a very big historical significance, and to preserve that, as I said, we are on YouTube, and all of these are recorded. So to preserve that history in a kind of a oral history sort of recording, I would invite Dr. Kamal Hossain to share with us his experience during the early 70s in setting up the industry and the regulatory framework. And globally, he is also recognized as an expert on sustainable development and sustainable growth in the energy sector. So if he can, time permits, he can also touch on that, and also his experience in various other parts of the world in the energy sector. So it's an honor to have you, sir, and the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much. No, first of all, may I congratulate those who have organized this excellent conference. It's something that I had fantasized about, the need for this kind of a meeting where you could get the person who's involved with policy making, those who are actually practicing law, and those who are engaged in the industry to come and exchange views and experience, because that's the only way in which you can get an integrated view of the issues and problems. So I really think that you are to be congratulated for starting something which I hope will become now a regular feature, that every 6 months or so you can have exchanges of this kind between the different parties concerned. I'm glad that you have asked me to go back and recall some of the early history. It's now 46 years, so that, you know, I realize how Bangladesh is now no longer just a young country. We're going to be 50 years old in 3 years. So we have 46 years of experience to digest, assimilate, and draw lessons from for the future. Now, the first point I would make is that when we started out in '72, it was a good time because the energy crisis globally was just a beginning. And so, when I took over the energy, in fact, I didn't take over the energy ministry, I was a law minister when the 40 applications came for signing up concessions, for grant of concessions, because that was the only thing under the existing law that they could ask for was concessions. Now, within our cabinet also we had very little experience of oil concessions and what it involved. So it fell to my lot as a law minister to do a briefing for the cabinet on what was involved. To do the briefing, I realized that the depth of my ignorance, and so what I did was reach out in every possible direction to find out what was being done elsewhere. And as a result, we began, we reached out to Indonesia, Algeria and places like that to see what they were doing. Because we found out that we were a gas-prone country. It was very interesting that we found that the Shell had discovered a great deal of gas, but it was sitting in the ground. Now we were very, as you know, resources short when we started out. A war-devastated country with tremendous shortage of resources. So we said, well, we have all this gas, why is nothing happening to it? So I called the Shell people. The Shell people wanted to renew their contracts which they had signed with Pakistan. So I said, I now have some leverage. So I said, yes, we'll renew these, but tell us what you want to do with your gas. So they looked very straight-facedly and said, gas is just of no value, no economic value. So I said, well, in that case, why don't you let us resume the ownership of what you found? They said, you give us the exploration costs and you can have it. 20,000 pounds. So I told the finance ministry, because it's worth quite a few billion pounds if you now think of it. They said 20,000 pounds, we'll give it to you for it. So the finance minister said, we don't have the money. I said, well, let me get installments. I said, we'll pay this over 10 years. So I went back to them and said, yes, yes, you can pay this over 10 years. So we signed up all the gas that we now have, the things on which we are still now, Bhuiyan and all of the rest. All this was got back by us free. I have a feeling that this is advantageous purchase of gas anywhere in the world, because some years later when the whole scene had changed, and I met the chairman of Shell in some conference and I said, you know, you gave us all your gas for 20,000 pounds. Do you think that was a good deal you had? He said, don't make me more ashamed. We gave you a gift. We didn't realize the value of this gas. It's extraordinary how head of Shell itself handed us this gas, saying this is of no value. And now you know what is the value of it globally, not to mention that in Bangladesh, the critical role that gas is playing in our energy sector. So it's very important for us to realize the importance of knowledge. And what we lacked at the outset was this knowledge of the industry, because this is an industry which is an international industry, the oil industry, gas industry. You have to understand what is happening in the world and principally what is happening in your own region to be able to make correct choices and decisions. Now, the word that I would like to inject into this discussion is energy strategy. Before you make law and policy, you should have a strategic vision of what it is that will be in your interest as a country to be pursuing. How much of your energy needs would be met by different sources. We have gas, we have the choice of importing other resources, oil, coal and so on. So it's a question of what mix would give you the optimum result. And what I have suggested and what I had suggested at the end of my period of as energy minister was how little we knew of the basic factors in our country and in the region which would enable us to make a sensible energy strategy. Now we are much better informed. We have people like our participants today who themselves have both the technical expertise and now the practical expertise of running these sections. But believe me, 40 years, 50 years ago, this is what was totally lacking. What we have now, it is the expertise that is present here with us as fellow panelists. And finding them here, I am encouraged to say what I am about to say, which is that it is really high time that we engaged in making a national strategy for our energy needs, and to do so by analyzing the experience we have had in 46 years. I believe we will find that we have made very correct decisions and we have also made many mistaken decisions. And you can learn more from mistakes than from the correct decisions. So with those who are here today, I believe one thing we do need is, before making wrong decisions, before losing the chance to make right decisions, there should be really, what I'm going to say today, I hope, provide all of you the opportunity to participate in this discussion of see what is happening and the options that are being adopted and whether these are the best options for Bangladesh. We've heard from the very well written paper that was presented on the LNG imports, the LPG imports and so on. Big question mark. Is LNG imports the best option for Bangladesh? In my view, it is not. I have a view, a very strong view on this. Why is it being done? A lot of money is to be made, and is being made, will be made through these imports. We have for the last 20, 30 years been saying more exploration, more exploration, more exploration. I'm sure Dr. Tamim will agree with me that this is there in all the papers. Successive governments, the technical people, particularly Petrobangla, every paper has said, we have gas sitting under the ground, and as the paper has pointed out, offshore, it's only now that we are beginning to look at the offshore. But the offshore has been there for 46 years. Why has this happened? Why has there been a low level of exploration? I hope we'll get some answers from my fellow panelists. I mean, they may not be able to say everything because some of this is obviously maybe classified. But I would really like, they have access to classified, I would beg them to look at all of those things and see why for the last 40 years exploration has been downgraded. Because we know that there are prospects in the offshore, and even onshore there is not the intensity of exploration that one would expect. Because if you can find your own gas resources, it's not only that you can use it yourself. The other thing I have said is, the thing that stares you in the face is why we have not thought in regional terms. Because in regional terms, we have an extraordinary situation where you have huge hydroelectric potential in Bhutan and Nepal. Our natural gas is a significant source of energy resources. Coal and hydropower in India. All of these point to the need for a regional strategy where we can optimize. The notion of optimizing regionally is something that is in everybody's interest. It's not that it is only in Bangladesh's interest. It would be certainly in the interest of India to optimize, to be able to draw upon all of these resources in a way over time that you get the best contribution to meet your energy needs. What is therefore needed, I believe, is a framework for regional cooperation to be developed through collecting data on regional energy trade, the facilitation of such trade, joint ventures in exploration and production of hydropower, common facilities for the region, and joint strategies and common approaches and information exchange on new technologies. Among the things that call for urgent action are for preparing and presenting joint strategies and common agreed approaches on energy and environment on behalf of all the countries of the subcontinent, and facilitating speedy and full exchange of information on the latest technologies being developed across the globe for meeting regional energy needs. Above all, the critical importance of evolving a broad political consensus within the countries and across the region must be recognized. So the development of a more exchange of information and knowledge with a view to arriving at a political consensus and to have discussions on evolving a common strategy, because a strategy will not just come instantly. It is something that has to be, each side would have to see the advantages, disadvantages, the gains and losses, and then see whether it is in its need. Now, my belief is that a proper, informed exchange of ideas on in the energy sector, and we have had some. I think a few years ago in Delhi there was a regional exchange of this kind, where I found the discussion was quite encouraging. And for example, they found that, just to give you an example, the best and cheapest source of energy for us would be to run a small line from Bhutan to here. There's enormous supplies of electricity there. Because Bhutanis say, but you must persuade your Indian friends. We should be able to persuade them, because what we would get would be of advantage, and there's no reason why there should be a negative response if we put it in the framework of larger cooperation. So I conclude by saying that I think this kind of meeting is a very good example of the kind of meeting which should be held not only among young lawyers but among policy makers, both in this country and regionally. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for the really animated speech. And many of the issues that you have touched on, I'm sure there will be many questions on those, such as the necessity of LNG import. And I'm sure the audience is concerned on many other issues, on how the energy sector is being managed at present in Bangladesh, including the Speedy Electricity Supply Act, which Karishma referred to in her speech, which allows tendering projects without any bid, unsolicited projects. So how does that affect the economy and transparency and good governance in this sector? I'm sure all of these issues would come during the Q&A. But now I would invite Dr. M. Fouzul Kabir Khan to make his presentation. And as I said before, he should not feel fettered to travel on any aspect of the theme here, but would be good if he can also cover the regulatory framework in Bangladesh, the reforms that are needed, the pitfalls and the lacuna that are there, how the sector is being managed at present, and how it can be improved. Thank you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Thanks to the organizer for inviting me. And sorry about being underdressed for this August occasion. And also thanks to Karishma for giving a very good summary of the laws and rules, regulations regarding the energy sector. Okay, so my first comment would be that our LNG and electricity related laws are archaic. The basic law for the electricity sector is the Electricity Act 1910. Before I was born, before my dad was born, and so on and so forth. So it's still continuing with that law. That is the basic law, Electricity Act.
108 years.
Yeah, that's right, 108 years. So that is the problem. But in the meantime, the world has changed. Not only world has changed, Bangladesh has changed. So the basic changes are, I would like to cover those to understand it very clearly. The basic changes were, in those days, the electricity was an integrated utility. So the same agency would do generation, same agency would do transmission, and same agency would do electricity distribution. But then we have globally, and also here in Bangladesh, the sector has been unbundled. So now generation is done by some entities, and then transmission is done by different entity, and distributions are done by different entities. So that is the first change. The second change that I would like to refer to is that it was considered a government responsibility. The government was the sole agency responsible for doing anything related to electricity. So that has changed. And we know even in our country, about 60% of the electricity is generated by the private sector. And then there are also other changes. Like for example, when I used to teach economics back earlier, so we used to teach that give an example of a traded goods, we would mention electricity. But we all know that electricity is no longer a non-traded good. It is a traded good. So we bought electricity from India and throughout Europe, to everywhere, even in the ASEAN region, everywhere. Electricity is a traded goods. So I can go on and on, but these are the three fundamental changes that I would like to flag. And none of these are reflected in the Electricity Act. So, for example, we have created BERC, but still the Electricity Act says that the license will be given by Bangladesh Power Development Board. And there are what you call this unbundling of electricity is not there. And then only fossil fuel. And then power trading. Nothing is included in the Electricity Act. And then coming to the year part of it. Now I work for my wife, having the same boss both at office and at work. So on behalf of that company, we are contracted by PowerCell to change this thing, Electricity Act. So we did that. Nihad was with us, Nihad Kabir, some of you might know. So we did, we reviewed the Electricity Acts of electricity laws of Sri Lanka, India, Pakistan, even progressive countries like Australia and England. And then we submitted our report back in May 2013 with specific said that this is to be amended, this to be dropped, this is redundant, this to be discussed. And still that has not been done. And there is a draft circulating in the website of PowerCell or the ministry since since 2015. Even they have prepared a draft. So that is also there for since 2015, 3 years from now. So the first issue that I would like to highlight is that we need to overhaul this. Some of this law simply needs to be thrown to the dustbins, the nearest basket, and this is rewritten completely because the world has changed. Okay. The second point that I would like to highlight is that I think the moderator has referred to. While we have not been doing things that we should have done, we are doing things that we should not. We are doing things that we should not have done. The classic example is the however you translate this, Speedy Supply of Electricity and Energy Special Provisions Act 2010. So this was initially enacted for 5 years. Now it has been given a lease of life up to 2010. 2018, sorry, 2018. And say 2 years, and then, okay, all right. So this is called emergency. You know, how long the emergency will remain? 8 years emergency? What is it? What kind of emergency it is? The second question is, the law says that that you could procure. So I'll come to the, I'll go the other way around. First one is that any decisions made under this law cannot be changed in the court of law. That it is the Constitution that tells what is the jurisdiction of the court. And you are trying to limit the jurisdiction of the court with a retail law. That has been done. So, number one. The second second issue is that it says that you could negotiate without going for. But under the English law tradition, I have seen judgment by English courts that if you are using public funds, it is mandatory to have what we call competitive procurement, except for 3 or 4 instances, like you are in a situation of famine where people are dying, so you can bypass competitive procurement. You are in a situation of war, and it's a small purchase, or it's a proprietary thing that there's only one supplier. Other than that, entire English law tradition, all the English law court judgments are there that competition is mandatory. And we've been doing this. You could probably accept that, okay, 1 year, 2 years, we're in a crisis, firefighting situation, you could live with this. But after 8 years, the law is still there. So to conclude, I'll be within time. To conclude, we should be doing things that we should do. we should hear all this archaic law and then throw them, rewrite them, and as lawyers, you can provide useful inputs to them, act on them very, very quickly. And also, we should stop doing things that we should not be doing. And then what you call the laws like this, should not have any place in a civilized and a modern country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, may I invite Dr. Mohammad Tamim to make his speech. And I mean, some of the issues have already been covered, so I would request, if possible, Dr. Tamim to cover the capacity in this sector of the professionals, because he has experience in dealing with a spectrum of professionals in the sector, including lawyers and engineers. So if he can touch on the capacity of the sector in Bangladesh.
ধন্যবাদ। আমি প্রথমেই শুরু করব থিঙ্ক ট্যাঙ্কে ধন্যবাদ জানিয়ে, যেরকম একটা সুন্দর আয়োজন করা হয়েছে, যেখানে আমি অনেক ইয়াং লয়ার্স দেখতে পাচ্ছি। তো আমাদের জুডিশিয়ারি নিয়ে তো অলরেডি অনেক ধরনের প্রশ্ন উঠছে, কথা উঠছে। I am feeling very encouraged, seeing so many young, bright people coming into the law profession and enriching this law sector. But at the same time, I am disappointed with regards to energy and power sector, the role of lawyers in this sector. Somehow, আমাদের মাঝে কিন্তু সাধারণ মানুষের মধ্যে একটা পারসেপশন হচ্ছে, আমরা যেসব কন্ট্রাক্ট করি বিদেশি কোম্পানিদের সাথে বা কোনো দেশের সাথে, বাংলাদেশ is always in the receiving end of that contract. We are not doing a good job. We are selling our country. We are doing really bad in terms of contracts and other things. এই পারসেপশনটা কিন্তু very strongly prevailing in the society. If you ask anybody, there is nobody. Nobody knows. There is no contract negotiators. And I will blame the lawyers for that perception to persist. They should come up. They should talk. When the speedy supply of energy and power came up, except probably from Dr. Kamal Hossain, I have not heard a single lawyer saying that this cannot be a permanent long-term thing. I supported it. I supported it because that time that was an emergency situation. A rental power plant takes 3 to 6 months to establish. Now, if it go through a tender process where there is a huge deficit and tender process takes 3 months, 4 months, then it defeats the purpose of rental power plant. So I can understand that emergency measure that was needed at that time. But কথা হচ্ছে যে আজকে 8 বছর হয়ে গেছে, যেটা ফজল কবির সাহেব বললেন, nobody is questioning. Huge projects, mega projects, billions of dollars of projects are being given on unsolicited offers using public money, as it is said. And there is not a lawyer, because if Dr. Kamal Hossain talks about it, it is given a political color. He is branded, no, this is from political perspective he's talking about. But how about you guys? Why don't you speak up and say that it is time for us to change that? And large projects, that project, if it is a 5-year, 10-year project, how can you do it in 15 days negotiation? Why can't you find the market price of that? So that's one complaint I will have against the lawyers, and I hope there are more young energy lawyer or energy and power lawyer who are experts in that, and who will talk. You have to talk. You have to speak up. You have to tell the what is right and what is wrong, at least in your honest opinion, that you have to say that. There is also a tremendous, what should I say, lack of faith or lack of competent people. I don't know what it is. Government seems to be very reluctant consulting lawyers. I don't know why. Everywhere in the world where you go for a negotiation, 5 lawyers sit behind you and The guy who is representing government is talking, and every 2 seconds he is consulting a lawyer at the back. We don't have that scenario. We don't see that. I have been personally involved in consultation as an external consultant for the BARC Act and also the Shredder Act. I did not see a single lawyer in the entire consultation and seminars that we had for the formation of BARC and Shredder. Why? Where you guys are failing, I don't know. A BARC, which is a regulatory body, which requires a lot of lawyer input, who knows about this sector, the BARC Act is completely, it's not completely, I would say it's quite flawed. Because originally, BARC এবং Conservation Act একসাথে হওয়ার কথা ছিল, Regulatory, Electric Regulator, Energy Regulator, Conservation Act. So we are pushing, we are developing both actually, And then it was found that দুটো যদি একসাথে যায়, the legislative policy process যেটা আছে তাতে দেখা যাবে যে দুটোর হতে অনেক সময় লাগবে. USAID was the main driving force for developing BARC. And then we said that, okay, let's take some of the stuff from Conservation Act and put it in the BARC and just push for one. And that's what happened. Now, Shredder, who's supposed to look into efficiency and conservation, has no regulatory power because BARC has already have that. That need to be revised. Law initially অনেক রকমের ফল্ট থাকতে পারে, but that revision is required. 2003-এ BARC করা হয়েছে, এখন আমরা কাজ করতে গিয়ে দেখতে পাচ্ছি যে ইন্সপেকশন, অডিটিং এসব জায়গায় আমাদের অ্যাকচুয়ালি শেডার ভালো ভূমিকা থাকা দরকার. শেডার ডাজন্ট হ্যাভ এনি, আমরা আজকে এফিসিয়েন্সির কথা বলছি, শেডার ডাজন্ট হ্যাভ এনি legal power to fine or give some, punishment to the people who don't comply with the efficiency requirement. So তাদের যদি সেই ক্ষমতা না থাকে তাহলে তারা তো কিছু ইমপ্লিমেন্ট করতে পারবে না. এমনি আমাদের মনিটরিং এবং implementation is very weak. General governance is weak. There are many other areas where we really need young lawyers to help us. We are going into the nuclear era. And in nuclear era, the key word that is used is safety, security, safeguard, and liability. We have IAEA ওরা মাইলস্টোন পদ্ধতিতে নিউক্লিয়ার পাওয়ার প্ল্যান্টের ইমপ্লিমেন্টেশনটা মনিটর করে. There is a milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, and they have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. Different phases, they go into this. And we have fulfilled the key issue, key requirement for that is nuclear regulatory body. And we have a nuclear regulatory body where there is only one person who is actually competent to have some regulatory expertise. And we need input from young people. We need input in, I would encourage people to get into the nuclear, international nuclear laws and treaties and the processes. It's mostly lawyers. I recently attended a nuclear, in Singapore on a conference on nuclear issues, nuclear concerns, civil concerns on nuclear issues. 80% of the people who were there were lawyers. And I don't find that in Bangladesh. And we are getting into nuclear era. So we have a huge gap in legal capacity building in energy and power sector. And I want to see that visibility. If we don't have that, we'll have some really bad deals, and the country will suffer. And we cannot allow the bureaucrats or the lawyers or the politicians have a free ride on these things. You are the one who is supposed to pull the rein. So there are other issues. I would like to highlight a few more that was mentioned. Dr. Kamal Hossain said that LNG is not the option. I would say it is not the first option. The first option was to explore. If you look at the contracts, despite all these negative thoughts that I have just talked about, we have done some fantastic contracts. If you look at the energy purchase contract with AES in 1997, it is one of the best power purchase contract in the world for a host country. If you look at the PSCs that we have signed, the production sharing contract we have signed with the oil companies, one of the best in favor of host countries that we have done. 97 সালে আমরা PSC করেছি with a ceiling price of $3 gas, and still we are getting the benefit of that. আমরা যদি IOCদের কাছ থেকে পুরো গ্যাসটাও $3 এখন কিনি, that itself will consider to be a stroke of genius, because the current price is minimum $8 to $10, and that is low. So we are bringing in LNG at $10. Nobody is saying anything. There are protests against PSC contracts in this country that বিদেশিরা আমাদের সব টাকা লুট করে নিয়ে যাচ্ছে. What is happening now? $3 billion contract has been signed. We will be paying $3 billion to import LNG. That's our money going away. But if you look at the production sharing contract, we are getting far more gas at a fraction of that cost, our own gas, developed by international oil companies. So I think you have to highlight these good contracts, let people know that if we can do good contracts, it will be better for the country. Political rhetoric, political activism, we'll have to really face and counter those activism-এর যে সব আর্গুমেন্ট সেগুলোকে আমাদেরকে কাউন্টার করতে হবে, এবং সেইখানে আই থিঙ্ক লয়ারদের একটা বড় ভূমিকা আছে, বাট ইউ হ্যাভ টু হ্যাভ দ্য নলেজ অফ দিস সেক্টর, ইউ হ্যাভ টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড দ্য ডাইনামিক্স অফ অল দ্য বিজনেস অ্যান্ড পলিটিক্স অফ এনার্জি অ্যান্ড পাওয়ার। আমি এখন এটুকু বলেই শেষ করছি, ধন্যবাদ।
Thank you, sir, for the excellent speech. And I'm sure after your presentation, many young participants who are here would feel encouraged to go deeply into energy law and policy, and not just get interested in learning more about energy law and policy, would also become involved in the sector and voice their concern as to how the sector is being managed and how it should be managed in future. So now we have done the first round of panel, and now if I would like to know, does any one of the panelists want to add anything more, or we should go into the Q&A? Sure, sir, sure.
Encouraged by what both the panelists have said, and as I expected, that you have done very well to get perhaps the two best panelists you could have found, because both from the public sector side as well as the ministerial side. Because I'll just give one anecdote or an actual thing that happened when Professor Tamim was the advisor in the interim period. That's when I first had an encounter with him. The minister, he was essentially the minister, and the secretary from the ministry came with a file saying, there's an arbitration in The Hague. Would you go and say that, we have not contested it, if they would forgo $300,000 of costs? So I looked at the file, and I was truly annoyed, because no papers had at all been put in to put the government's case. And I told him, look, you have allowed the case to be lost, or case has been lost. Now you ask me to go and just say, please forgive us costs. I said, this is demeaning. You have a third secretary in the embassy in Holland. He can go and do this. So I was really annoyed, and he left. After a few minutes, the secretary came and said, would you talk to the advisor? He wants to talk to you on the phone. Professor, that's when I first heard to Professor Tamim's wife. And he said, I believe you were very annoyed. I said, no, I was not annoyed, but I was just reacting to the fact that a $450 million case We did not put in any papers in defense, and now we say forego $300,000 of cost, having accepted a loss of $450 million. And over the years, this would be $2 billion. So, having shared, he said, but do you think there was some case that we could put up? I said, look, every case there's something to put up, but in this case I do see there's a great deal to be put up. He said, if we ask you to go and contest on the facts, or contest the case, would you go? I said, yes, on that condition I will go, that you give instruction that we can contest. So I went to The Hague. Former president of the International Court was chairman of the tribunal. So he saw me and I said, look, I've come here to say that please give us an opportunity to put in something which gives you the other side of the case, because nothing has been given. So he said, but you see, the government had the opportunity. Government side has done nothing for 3 years. Now you come and you're fixing the date for the award to say, please give us a chance to say something. So the other side also, Shell's lawyer, Chevron's lawyer stood up and laughed. He said, but this is very amusing, somebody coming here on this date and asking for a chance. For 3 years they have done nothing. Ha, 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 you see. So I then told the president of the tribunal, I said, look, I have some sympathy for you that you are to give an award for a $450 million case, having only had one side of the case. There is another side of the case. So being a sort of seasoned judge from the International Court, they said, all right, we give you one opportunity, 3 months. Whatever you have to say for the government side, say it in 3 months and not 1 day more. So I seized the opportunity. I said, fine. And I realized how difficult it would be to put something in 3 months, what was not done in 3 years. I came out, as fortune favors the brave. I met some of my friends who were there for the International Court's case. So I said, please, would you help? I have taken on a burden which I cannot discharge without your help. So some very outstanding lawyers agreed. They said, and I said, what fees you will be paid, I can't say, but I'll see that some fees are paid to you. So we got together, and in 3 months we put together a case. When we put it into court, the Chevron people said, we need at least 6 months to answer these points. So first I was reassured that what we had done was worthwhile. And then you will be happy to hear, and Professor Tamim will be happy to hear, that we won that case. So we don't have, with costs, we don't have to pay $450 million. We got costs, which means we saved another $2 billion, which we'll not have to pay over the next 20 years. So and I had also told him that I never charge fees to Petrobangla, because Petrobangla was created when I was minister, so I treated it as my child. So I said, I never take fees from Petrobangla. So this could be done. I mean, we have lawyers, and these were, and you can get help from lawyers. I mean, it's interesting how, in these cases, the best of international law become part of the team at very modest, for modest expenses. So it's not that expenses will deter you. Now, why is it that this happened? I just leave it to your imagination. You're all young lawyers and you have perfect capacity to understand why this happened. Why for 3 years not one piece of paper was put in to defend our case, saying basically to the court, we have no defense. The implication was $450 million plus $2 billion over 20 years. Now you'll be happy. The last thing I will say is when I came back, the president or vice president of Chevron was visiting. I met him somewhere. He came up and said, congratulations, you won that case. We are not even appealing. You know, from the company's point of view, they realized how weak their position was, that they could not even appeal. And that was a case on which our side had not filed one single piece of paper. Now, you know, this is something which I think now we have someone from government, now someone also from academia and so on, that you should understand why this happens. It's not that we don't have lawyers and that we don't have technical people. I mean, I'm so happy that they were the fellow panelists, because they use language that I would not have been able to use in deference to them. That take these things and put them in the bin. That's exactly what I feel, but I could not use those words because I thought that would offend somebody who had been in government. But when he, having been in government, says that, you realize the real truth that we need to. Why are these things not being done? Even now. I mean, I started 46 years ago when we were just new. After 46 years, his frustration is the same. So young people must really realize that this country has professional expertise. You are there, they are there. And there's no reason why we should go and say we have nothing to say. In every case, that at least 3 cases I have done, and that was because not by the government of the day, but some interim government or some expert like him, we have won them all. So it's not that that every case, you see, for the government is a losing case. Now, having said that, I think you lawyers have an enormous amount to contribute to this sector in particular. And you now have people like my fellow panelists. I mean, interesting that it has been a sort of young lawyers initiative which has enabled us to come together. This should be an initiative taken at the highest level of getting people like him together for the future. You will do it, and at least now point this out to people who should know that, you know, these things have tremendous value, exchanging professional expertise and experience. Thank you.
I'll just add a little bit to that story. So I was called by the secretary at 11:30 in the night, saying, "Sir, tomorrow, right now, sir, within an hour, we have to take a decision because there is a fee to be paid to plead, $100,000 or something. You know, who is going to authorize? Because the secretary can't authorize that payment." I said, I am authorized. I'm taking on my own. Just pay that bill, laddie, and get it through. And later on, this case went on, and I left the ministry. This case went on, and for the final litigation, final argument, this is something probably Dr. Kamal doesn't know, but I heard somebody from Petroleum who was involved. The government wanted to change him. They wanted to send somebody else. But this particular gentleman in Petroleum said that if that is the case, then I am not going. And then finally, you know, they agreed. And we saved, as he said, their claim on us was about $450 million, about a 4% 4% amount of money they have been paying. They said that it was their money, so they claimed that $450 million. And if that case was won by them, then till now we'll be paying that 4% of that total bill, and that's quite a bit of high amount of money.
Okay, I'll try to answer what Dr. Kamal sir has asked here. Why doesn't the government or secretaries do things? Let me give you a specific example. When I became power secretary, so I also found out that I was the chairman of 8 or 9 companies under the power sector, DESCO, DPDC, whatever, you know, ECGCB, PGCB, all kind of acronym companies. So I used to go there as chairman, and then one day I found that there was a challenge against my decision made by me as chairman in one of the companies. Then I said, this is serious conflict of interest. I cannot rule on my own decision. So I went to the head of the government, and then I said, this is serious conflict of interest, and I should not be there as chairman of the year. So then the head of the government took my advice, and then I was. But you know, by attending all this meeting, I would get a 5,000 taka check, and also access to vehicles and all in all the 9 companies and all that. So I told my wife that from next month, this 45,000 taka is out. She gave me a blank look. So this is why, you know, the ministries, the secretaries are engaged in things that they should not be doing in the first place. And that's why, you know, things like an important appeal, you don't put up here because you are doing all nonsense or things that you should not be doing. And then the other experience that I'll give you, that once I joined, my private secretary told that 120 businessmen wanted to see me. I said, why? Because the ministry, the secretary does not award any power plant. These procurements are made by the agencies, by this Power Development Board or whatever agencies. They purchase things. I just take it to the what you call cabinet committee for approval. So if they're agreed by a decision by I'll be happy to talk to them, listen to the agreement. But they have nothing with us. They should go to the agencies and then make their case whatever they have there, and then if only if they don't have a hearing from the agents, then they should come to me and I should listen to them. So that's why all our secretaries are busy with things they should not be doing. They should not be near doing anything like that. But we are all engaged. And by getting rid of this visits and years, meetings and chairing companies, I was able to read Naguib Mahfouz's trilogy at the same time, working as a secretary power. And everybody thought that is a power division is such a year that you don't get your head time to lift your head. And I read this very fat book while working as a power secretary. Okay, finally to conclude, coming to this LNG import question. You see, the modern energy policies globally is anchored down on two things. One is energy conservation. We cannot, it is a realization that you cannot go on here. You cannot shut off all the windows and then use electricity. Stop all normal ventilation. You construct building in a way that are energy gas, and also there are our boilers are inefficient. So energy conservation is one anchor. And unfortunately, while we were there, we drafted an Energy Conservation Act, you realize. And nobody works on them. But that is the anchor of modern energy policy. You cannot go on business as usual, adding generation capacity after generation capacity. You have to put a period, stop. The second thing is the renewable energy. So people are saying energy diversity, yes, it could be a temporary measure. But how long you are going to go with this? The world is moving away from fossil fuel to renewable energy. But then now what they're doing is, they've awarded 20 or odd contracts for solar projects. And none of these are coming. So they're creating an instance of failure so that they can say that no, renewable energy is not going to work in this country. Like people created this energy crisis, power crisis, to put in this law. So you have load shedding and then said, no, what do you have to do to get rid of load shedding? Get rid of competition. Just do a contract, negotiate, and get electricity generation into line. So as lawyers, I would request you to be forward-looking. The world is not moving away from fossil fuel. So the world is moving to this energy conservation. The world is moving for renewable energy. And the studies have been done not here. I was speaking at UC Berkeley a few months back, and they have done even for Bangladesh they have done studies that clearly show that Bangladesh could be self-reliant based on renewable energy, particularly solar energy.
Get some questions from
Sure, thank you. I'll stop.
Yeah, okay. So any questions? Is Mahirin there? Yeah. Can you get the mic to her, please? Anyone else? 1, 2, at the back, 3.
Hi, my name is Mehreen. My question relates to the Quick Enhancement of Electricity and Energy Supply Special Provisions Act 2010. The panelists have raised this act and discussed it, and as you know, many projects are now unsolicited and awarded under this act as opposed to the public procurement regulations. Now, this does raise questions relating to issues of fair competition, transparency, and obtaining the right tariff for the projects. And there's a specific provision in this act which says that no questions can be raised in any court of law regarding the validity of any act done under this act. So my question is whether this provision or the acts done under this provision can be validly or successfully be challenged in court, and in the event it can be successfully challenged, what will the statuses of the project be which have already been awarded under this act?
Okay, thank you. I'll take two more questions and we can address them all together. So one in the back, at the back. Thank you. Yeah, you're next.
Hello everyone. My name is Shubhan Mahmood. I'm a lawyer. My question is to Tamim. I have a couple of questions for you, sir. First one is the impact of Rampal coal project on Sundarban. And the second one is, sir, after the Fukushima incident in Japan, there is a huge concern about the safety of nuclear power plants. So we, as you have already told, that we are actually going into nuclear power. So what are the impacts or safety issues for Rupur power plant? Thank you.
And one here.
Hi, my name is Saeed. I'm a lawyer. We know Bangladesh is rapidly, the power sector is rapidly developing in Bangladesh, and government has already identified this sector as a priority sector, and huge foreign investments are coming in. So now my question is, I'm trying to understand whether we are actually heading towards the right direction. In particular, I'm trying to find out or understand whether this development can be called as sustainable development.
Okay, one more, last one.
Hello, I'm Suhan Khan. I'm also a lawyer. My firm is Accord Chambers. I was recently instructed with an EPC contract in the energy sector. And while working with that contract, I found out the lack of regulatory framework in the oil refinery sector, in the hydrocarbon. It is almost nil in that sector, the regulatory framework. So I have twofold questions. My first question is to Dr. M. Fouzul Kabir Khan. Reliance made an oil refinery of 668,000 barrels per day, which is now increased to 1.25 million barrels per day. We have Eastern Refinery doing only 33,000 barrels per day, and that dates back in the 1960s. My first question is, why are we lacking so much behind in the oil refinery sector? Unlike other sectors, like the electricity sector, private sectors are coming up. Why are we so much lagging behind in the oil refinery sector? And my second full question is to Dr. Kamal Hossain, sir. Why is there lack of regulatory framework in the oil refinery sectors? And do we see a light at the end of the tunnel in this regard with prospective legal frameworks upcoming? Thank you very much.
Okay, so just to recap, we have one question on the legality of the Quick Enhancement Act and the status of the project awarded under the Act. We have a question on the impact of Rampal on the Sundarbans. We have a question on the future strategy for the development of the sector. We have a question on the refining industry. So I'll start from this side, from Tamim Imran, from Dr. Tamim, and you can address all of them or the ones that you feel you want to address.
I'll be very short. Regarding Sundarban, I am least bothered about Rampal, actually, if you ask me. Sundarban is going to be ruined by other. 167 industries are already there. And because if you look at Gazipur, I just heard, some 3 army officers have given lease of forest land of 200 acres to make a resort in the forest of Gazipur, which is already gone, actually. So the population pressure, I don't know how long we'll be able to save Sundarban. But in terms of technology, yes, you can have a coal-fired power plant there with absolutely minimum impact on the environment. It is possible, but the cost of production will be very high. Technologically, it is possible. Nuclear safety, after Fukushima, there were 37 countries who were actively seeking nuclear power plant before Fukushima. And after Fukushima, not a single country withdrew that. So in that sense, Fukushima has been taken as a one-off incident, not as a general concern of nuclear safety in the world. That is the perception all over the world. I mean, we may feel differently, but that is the fact by IEA reporting. Oil refinery, the reason why don't you have oil refinery, we hardly had any oil use actually. So unless you want to get into the refinery business, which Reliance is, first of all, they have huge demand in India, which is being met by refineries in Singapore and other places. Only recently we are importing a lot of refined product, basically diesel. But petrol and other things, we have already self-sufficient petrol. Because we have promoted CNG. And now with the LNG coming in, I think CNG can stay. There is no reason for why we shouldn't have CNG. Because you accept it or not, CNG has a huge environmental impact on us. In the Dhaka city, the whatever the pollution you see, we are the third worst country in the world. That is from particulate, mostly, not from fuel exhaust. Fuel exhaust, there is hardly any cars in Dhaka actually, if you compare to the major mega cities. There's nothing, you know. Delhi has more taxis than what the total car we have. So that is nothing. And I think sustainable development, current development policy, whether it is sustainable, I don't believe it is sustainable. Because if 35% of electricity is being produced from oil, it cannot be sustained. As simple as that.
Yes, there's one or two simple questions. One is whether this ouster of jurisdiction, that this matter cannot go to court. Now, this can be challenged successfully because the court is conferred with jurisdiction by the Constitution, which is a higher law to ordinary statute law. So, where the Constitution says that there is jurisdiction, the statutory law cannot oust that jurisdiction successfully. So, it can be challenged. More difficult question is, if you have already signed a contract and then you go there, what will be the effect on the contract? Now, this is exactly a problem which I think is very well raised, because if you don't address this question of its legality and you sign it and work starts, then if that contract is stopped, first of all, the work will be hampered. Secondly, the party who will be deprived of his contractual rights will then claim damages and so on the ground that this was not his fault, that you didn't do something that you should have done. So complications will clearly be created. The moral of this is that you should be very careful to see that what you are negotiating is something that cannot be legally challenged. But this is where, of course, as has been said, the general reluctance to consult lawyers. I mean, this is something that has been pointed out, and I can tell you that this is the reason lawyers are not consulted, is because they would point out some of the difficulties, and those who are anxious to sign contracts don't want this to be pointed out.
Okay, so I must tell you that I am very passionate about Sundarbans, and let me tell you why. After the Cedar cyclone happened, all our southern, southeastern part of here, total electricity was disrupted.
Can I interrupt you for a second? Because I see the commander-in-chief of the organizer at the back. So I just wanted to ask her whether we can continue till 1 or... Till 1 is fine. Okay. Okay. And if you have to leave the room, thank you on behalf of all of us for organizing this.
Okay, so coming back to this, after the math of Cyclone Cedar, so I had to restore the electricity. So I went there, personally. And every resident that I spoke to in that area, all throughout Potuakali, whatever, Barisal, wherever, everybody is saying that without the Sundarbans, they would have been completely wiped out. The loss of life, the loss of property would have been 100, 200 times more. So about Rampal, I believe is the wrong choice. In other forums, I've specifically told this. You see, the basis for location of power plant is electricity demand. So how much is the electricity demand in that area, even in Khulna region? Actually, there is absolutely no rationale, there are 10, 12 years, ground basis to locate area. And it fulfills none of those criteria. And my personal view is that we are better off stopping it wherever it is, however progress. Even if you have to compensate somebody, pay the compensation and stop the project. So that's about Rampal. About this question of the other question of about what you call why not refinery is. Actually, the only thing about private sector participation that has been done is the private sector power generation policy. For other sectors, this has not been done. Not only that, it also created serious distortion. So everybody wants to be in the power business because there is a revenue model. But nobody wants to be in the refinery business. Nobody wants to be in the other infrastructure, roads, toll roads. Nobody wants to go there. I did a study for Asian Development Bank, and I asked people, and they tell me the same thing. So give us a private sector power generation policy equivalent for other sectors, then we'll get into those sectors. So by trying to do one thing, you are shutting off private sector participation in other areas. But what should ideally we would have, that you should have principles of participation in all infrastructure sectors, not just in power, and also in case of power is only limited to power generation. It doesn't cover power transmission, it doesn't cover power distribution.
No, thank you, sir. And I think, we can take two more questions. One there.
Thank you very much. My question is to Dr. M. Fouzul Kabir Khan, sir. You have mentioned in your speech that you have submitted a report on May 2013 regarding the Electricity Act of 1910, and then there was a draft report came on 2015 in the website of PowerCell. So my first question is, how much was implemented in the draft report of 2015? And the second question is, in your opinion, what we should do as a young lawyer to trigger the mind of policymaker to change those old laws? Thank you.
Any more questions?
Yeah. Hello, this is Kazi Akhtar. Mine is not a question, it's rather an answer. There is a law, Electricity Act 2018. So it also covered the, I guess, the suggestions given, and also these licensing authority is also being invested on the commission, that is the Bangladesh Energy Regulatory Commission. Thank you.
Okay, yes. Hello, can you hear me? Okay, all right. So about this Electricity Act, I think it was Tania Amir once told me, Barrister Tania Amir, whom you might know, is that, when you give government a law, a legal draft, that's a tortoise, they just take it and then make it to a monkey. When they release it, you don't see the tortoise, you see the monkey. So that's why, as I said, that I would not go to that extent, but they have not really been forward-looking. They have gone for the minimalist change. How to just do bare minimum to just take it through. So that is the problem. And then about this, I had a meeting in this same place with Power Secretary about 3 days back. Now I asked him, Kaikas, why you are not doing, what is the status of your law? He said, sir, we are still waiting for, they are looking at, they have commissioned Deloitte to do a study on corporatization of BPDB. I've been hearing about corporatization of BPDB at least for the last 30 years. So if you wait for corporatization of BPDB and then enact what you call Electricity Act, then all my prayers are for the ministry. I just can't pray. I just can't say anything about it.
Okay, thank you, sir. Does anyone want to add anything more? So in that case, we can conclude this session. I would like to thank the panelists for the excellent speeches, the keynote speaker for the wonderful presentation, the participants for their patient hearing. And I'm sure after this session, after this interaction, the young lawyers would feel encouraged to, as I said before, to take a lot of more interest on the energy sector, and which would perhaps someday assuage Dr. M. Tamim's frustration that you do not see lawyers involved in the energy matters. So with that, I conclude this panel, and I warmly thank the organizers for making this opportunity for the interaction between the young legal professionals and the experts in the field. So thank you very much.